T. The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is our MPP, Bill Walker, who is Minister Without Portfolio and Associate Minister of Energy for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Hey,
did I get it right?
You did, absolutely. It's good. Well done.
Yeah. Now, I hadn't realized until I actually looked at at your webpage. You are a minister without portfolio, which is kind of like a minister plenipotentiary.
Yes,
they can send
throw
you
anything
anywhere,
they want. Exactly.
But also associate minister of energy.
Yes.
Now, that's a new promotion for you, as I recall.
Yes.
That associate minister of energy, we'll get into a little bit, but that's a first. Someone asked me online, what do you mean associate minister? We've never had those before, but you're the first.
That's right. It has been within the legislation, so people could have used it. I don't think in recent years they have done that much. In this case, I believe what the real intent was, hydro is a big issue, energy is a big issue. Minister Rickford has Indigenous Affairs plus Northern Ontario plus energy, and I think frankly just was too much. So they wanted to have a bit more of a focus on specific areas, particularly I have an energy background with Bruce Power and have always been nuclear caucus chair. So I actually quite welcome it. I think it's good, and I think frankly, it's such an integral part of our province and our country that you need a lot of focus. So now the benefit of it is you get Minister Rickford and me working on it, which is good.
Right. So will that get you into any conversations about obviously nuclear and Hydro One and OPG are obviously parts of the portfolio, but will that get you into any conversations around oil and Alberta oil and pipelines as well, or is that going to be
not quite so much from the pipeline specific, only because again that's more of a federal and coming across interprovincial. If it came up where there was going to be an implication to Ontario, obviously one of us would have to be at the table and involved in that. I'll be more focusing on the things inherent to our hydro system, renewables certainly, conservation, LDCs, so your local distribution companies that we used to have in Owen Sound and now, but many municipalities still do, particularly the more urban.
Oh, we have West-Ontario Power.
West-Ontario Power here is certainly equivalent to Hydro One. So we'll look at across all of those. OPG, certainly any of the major players. Natural gas was one big one, so I kind of inherited phase one, and I'm very involved in phase two, which we're just developing, and we went back and revisited what worked well in phase one and have the ability to go to phase two. So that'll be coming out in the future. Right. So that's a very specific focus.
Sure. And are things like solar and wind also part of your portfolio?
Yes. So really anything energy-wise, I can be, if you will, jettisoned out to be involved with.
Sure.
We're trying to kind of stay in a couple of different lanes, so we're not overlapping or wasting time, both of us on one over here. But it again is such a vast portfolio that on any given day, if Minister Rickford wasn't available, I may go out, vice versa. But we'll keep very much tight communication because it has to be done in sync, and it is just such a wide. I have to tell you, I mean, I've been there for about 4.5 months. It seems like a simple portfolio until you really get into it. And even just as you say, things like OPG, the IESO, which is the regulator, the Ontario Energy Board. So there's all different factions. Then you, of course, have your different focuses of energy. So you have natural gas, you have your renewables, you have our hydroelectric. So a lot of those type of things. And even looking out of what other new forms. I just actually met with the Warden of Bruce County, who they have a group now looking at hydrogen and the opportunity to explore hydrogen and the potential, which I've always believed it's a natural byproduct of nuclear anyway. So it's maximizing an asset that we already have. Why wouldn't we look at that? Again, not simple and easy to get there, but why wouldn't we? It's a huge opportunity, I think.
And the interesting thing about the hydrogen plans is that includes our First Nations communities.
Absolutely.
Which is a plus for them and for energy as a whole.
Absolutely. And the Warden did speak about Chief Anaquat definitely being very involved, and again, great for our whole area. You know, I think we have the ability to be the energy hub in some ways of Ontario because of all the different factions we have, and again, it's being cooperative. It's making sure we're all going after the same end line. And the great thing again is they're all carbon free, so it's fabulous.
Right. Now I have to ask you a question. I feel like I'm kind of we're back in school here, but it's a legitimate question. What did you do for the summer?
Well, I did pretty much what I do every day of the year. My schedule doesn't really change, frankly.
Right.
My wife will be the first to tell you that. I don't take a lot of vacations. I think that's where you're going from. A lot of people said we had a huge vacation for the summertime.
Well, that's my point. Is
yeah.
But I know you, and I know that an MPP as well as an MP, you're very busy people.
Absolutely.
If you're not in meetings in Toronto, there's people to see, committees to attend.
Absolutely. So we definitely have a pretty hectic schedule. What I was able to do is just get out to see that many more people, because not sitting in Toronto, I had that much more time to be here. I also did some stuff across the province in my ministry role. You do still have cabinet, you still do have committee in the summertime. Yes, the legislature itself doesn't function during that as part of question period, but the rest of the government still keeps rolling. So we were very active, very busy. One of the NDP colleagues actually inadvertently, I think, said, that 5-month holiday we had. And I said, well, Mr. West, you might have had 5 months off. I certainly didn't. And I mean, none of us, maybe people took a couple of weeks like anybody would normally do if you have the ability. But there's just so much going on, so much need. A big riding like mine, again, from Tobermory to Dundalk. There's a lot of people, a lot of communities, and a lot of groups.
Sure.
And many groups, again, because new government. What are you thinking? Where are you going? Are you going to be different? So they all want to sit in front of you. They want to have access. And frankly, that's the best part of it, because I'm getting factual information to be able to take back to Queen's Park.
And it's interesting you should say that, because one of the things I certainly noticed, and I'm not sure, I think most people noticed, is that there has been a tonal shift in the government towards a more listening perspective, wanting to take people seriously, and sitting down and saying, okay, let's talk, let's deal with this, and to your credit, that seems to be working.
Definitely.
I mean, in many circles, I'm hearing the same thing. So, I'm glad to hear that shift has happened.
And I think I can share, David. I mean, I don't know every single government, but the more you talk to the more senior members who have been around for quite a long time, will say almost every government in their first year comes out of the gate. They want to be new, they want to be fresh, they want to be doing a lot of change. So you do that, but inadvertently, you don't know what you don't know. And over time, you start to get good feedback. You may make decisions that you say, if I'd have been able to go slower, but again, some things people don't want. People are saying to me in energy, fix it. You've been in for a year now. You should have fixed hydro. Well, it took 15 years to make it the mess it is, really, and maybe longer than that, frankly. Yeah. But they want it fixed in a year. So I definitely think the tone, I hear it similarly. People saying, you look like you're measured, you look like you're listening. You've actually listened to the public and reversed certain things that they believe was a good thing. Yeah. And I think you should, as leadership. If you have different facts presented to you than when you made a decision, and it makes sense for who you're serving, why wouldn't you take a look at that? And I actually, certainly from the Premier's perspective, but all of us, Cabinet, caucus colleagues, we're here to serve. We wanted, we all come, I think you said it in the last time I interviewed, we all come to the table wanting to do better things. But listening's a big part of that.
I think the other thing, just a small point, in your previous portfolio, one of the things I remember you saying, you were responsible for Tarion, the house warranty.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you probably won't take credit for it, but it's started to be fixed. There's been some work done on Tarion, which is for many people, particularly building new houses, that's important.
It's a big issue, absolutely. And a lot of that, again, was, there was a process to follow. We wanted to consult, we wanted to understand. We didn't want to just do knee-jerk. So yes, I had done a lot of the lifting, and Minister Thompson has came in and continued on. A lot of great staff stayed in that ministry, so they were already doing a lot of the good work, and she's now able to get some of it over the finish line. And again, people are really saying, I want to see change in many of those things. And for some, the criticism we'll get is we're still not going fast enough. So again, you sometimes can't win for losing. If you go too fast, you're criticized if you don't go fast enough. But that one definitely, I think, the public spoke loud and clear. We did a fairly significant consultation, and we've gone back, we've looked at Justice Cunningham's recommendations, which I had done as well, and said, okay, now it's time to show some action. We need to do this. The people are asking for it. For most people, it is the biggest investment of your life. You want to know that you have an agency that truly has your back when an issue arises. And hopefully, if we can do things well, there'll be less issues to have to deal with. But definitely need to be fixed.
Sure. And I think people have to remember, too, that it's not a public service blockage issue. It is people paying attention. One of the things I hear is, oh, why can't the government fix it? Well, public service presents the options.
Absolutely.
And it's up to you as a government to make those decisions to bring about the changes that are necessary.
Yes, and in that case, it's actually an agency of government, so
Right.
it's arm's length. So we really can't tell them you have to, you shall. We can put parameters in place and say we expect a service delivery of this, but it is a solely elected body, appointed body, and they run their own corporations. So again, it's always that challenge of if you can be criticized if you're too heavy-handed,
Right.
but the public does see it as it is a government responsibility.
Yeah.
So in my way of being minister, how I dealt with it was to try to give them directive and try to move them in a direction, present the issues that the public was saying, and again say to them, now you tell me how you're going to fix this, because if you don't, you will force our hand that we'll have to get more involved.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what people don't realize, and I've come to realize myself over the last few years, is that in fact it's a dare I use the word dance? You know, it's a back and forth and give and take and working it out, and doesn't matter whether it's health or something like Tarion or energy or goodness knows. It's an ongoing conversation, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a prime example, which is exactly that. Just in the last 2 days, a county councillor has a differing view on Grey Gables and how the county is looking at it as opposed to me. And what was really great is he did approach me. We had very good conversation. We, again, didn't always agree, but we both put a whole bunch more information on the table than either one of us had from just seeing it from one side.
Yeah.
And he was the one that said to me, you know, this is the way it should be done. I'm much more knowledgeable. I may not agree with everything you said or your position. Again, we both have different roles. County government, I try to stay out of their jurisdiction and vice versa. But him understanding what I can or can't do at a provincial level was very beneficial. So your analogy is perfect. It's you know, a bit of give, a bit of take, and let's find that common ground in the middle so we can all move forward collectively and progressively, as opposed to just that loggerheads or people not coming to the table to have the discussion.
Yeah, or protesting because they think something has been said when maybe it has, maybe it hasn't.
Or out of context, or only a piece of a conversation. And, you know, I've always said, particularly with all of my municipalities, whether it be lower tier or the two counties or the First Nations, the more that you keep me in the loop, the more I understand what your expectation, where you're going, what your plan is, the better I can advocate for you. And I said to this individual, why would you not want to be at the table and have me vouching for what you want and educating me? I'm in the cabinet. We haven't had that for a long time. I don't even know when the last time was. So I have the ability to put that case in front of people. So the more you can educate me, the better. And I also try to then give educational sides that here's what you maybe don't understand or appreciate what we can or cannot do, what legislative controls I do or don't have. Because lots of people, again, assume you're a government, you can just go in and do whatever you want.
No.
Well, you can, I guess, but at your own peril sometimes. And I don't believe, again, the heavy-handed approach really works. I think you want to be consultative, you want to listen, but you have to definitely make decisions. That's the other thing. I'm not a big fan of some governments that the words may be inappropriate, but dithering, right? They never make a decision, and it's 5 more years before it. Well, what have we lost in those 5 years that you never gained back?
I know. I want to shift things a little bit because catching up on vacation, as in the middle of your vacation from at least sitting in the house, at Queen's Park, there was a federal election. Now, where did that place you? Were you working for Alex, or did you do any campaigning, or did you just sit back and go fishing?
No, and I never have, even with Larry or vice versa. You know, we certainly consult each other, and I'm always a person, as Larry was for me. If you have questions, if you have thought process, if you want to run something by me. But again, federal is much different than my world, so I can give a little bit of advice. Yes, and so I don't get hands-on involved. I don't door knock. I don't do any of that. In the background, again, if people are asking my opinion or what do I know, you know, most people would typically come and say, what do you know about this Alex guy, right? So I would give them what I thought. I would give them a bit of what I thought the party's direction that he had shared with me, and try to help educate, again, people from that perspective. But I really try to stay out of it, and frankly, the other side of it is I was too busy, right? For me to give up a whole bunch of time, that means the people that are expecting me to get things done weren't getting that. So I've never, with Larry or with Alex or whoever down the road, have always said, and nor do I expect them to do it for me. I mean, if they want to get involved, fine. But it's really having that knowledge of being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, in my case it was Larry, hey, how did you deal with this? Or what was your experience? Or have you ever tried campaigning in this manner? But again, they're really different. Just because we're both conservative doesn't mean everything is identical. How we run our campaigns sometimes is different.
And two different party organizations.
Absolutely.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you too is that in the federal system, and I think it's true in the provincial system, when an election is called, the government goes into what's called caretaker mode.
Yes.
Only essential stuff gets done. But that does not apply to a federal election, to the provincial civil service or the provincial government. You're still doing the work of governing
absolutely,
all the way through
yes.
an election.
Yes.
So it was business as usual, keep on going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Our machinery just keeps motoring along. Certain things, again, so I'll use the joint infrastructure program.
Sure.
That would come to a stop because, again, our minister wouldn't be able to talk to anyone there.
Right.
Now, the bureaucrats could still be having some conversations back and forth. If it was technical, we have to get this passed or this done. But nothing legislatively can actually be done because, again, they go into a dormant state.
Right. It's always a fascinating conversation to have, because one of the things I know is that a lot of people don't know what goes on, and while it may seem like silly minutiae, it's how we are governed. It's how we do this stuff. Well, let's switch a little bit. You came back into the House, fall economic statement. What's your comment on that?
So I think a fall economic statement is designed to say, here's where we are, here's what we said we were going to do. So you're kind of a bit of a report card, if I can, of here's what we believe we want to do in our first year with our budget, here's where we're at, and laying a bit of the ground for some of the accomplishments and where are we going down the road. So I think what you saw in this fiscal economic statement, fall economic statement, is here are the type of things we said we were going to do, like lowering the deficit, like lowering debt, open for business. So our 5 kind of pillars of the election is staying focused on those. We've seen some reduction in the deficit, which I think is good, because I'm a big proponent of saying, why are we spending money on debt payments as opposed to programs and services? And it shows that we are on that trajectory over 5 years to balance the budget. And the whole intent there, again, is right now we are spending $13 billion a year in interest payments. The intent is to get to a point where we're not spending $13 billion, and you have the flexibility with that money to do greater things. So I was very pleased with the bulk of what was there. Sometimes it gets into the minutiae of a very specific action in a municipality. But for me, it was really getting a sense and giving the people the sense that we said we were going to go down this path. We have followed that path, and here's the outcome so far of what we've achieved. Also saying there's still lots of work to get done. So again, using my energy analogy, it's not going to be done in year 1. It'll be done over the term, and some things, again, the reality is it may take 2 terms to get to you really want to go, and that's why some people were critical that we didn't say we would balance the budget in 4 years or 3 years.
Right.
We took 5 years because we felt that was the prudent, measured way, so we didn't have to inflict some challenges on people that were not going to necessarily be beneficial in the short term.
I heard it expressed in a very interesting way recently by a person who is not in government but is outside of government but has many years' experience in government. What the government has said is, here's our big goal. We're going to change the playbook on how we reach that goal. We have that flexibility as the deficit was lower, so there was a little more money to do something with, and you did. And so that the playbook may change, and I think that was helpful for me to hear that, because it's very easy to be critical of any government, doesn't matter what stripe it is, when they don't seem to meet their goals that they espouse in an election campaign. And to hear that hey, well, just a minute, you've got a big goal, which I'm sure you probably do have. You've got the big goal of deficit reduction and whatever, but it'll take longer, and we'll be a little more flexible on reaching that. Of course, it all depends on how the economy performs too.
Absolutely, and I think the key that I'm a sports guy, so I like the playbook. The variables change.
Yes.
So you have to be nimble and flexible and thoughtful, frankly, enough to say, okay, I didn't anticipate this was going to happen, so what can we do without losing total focus? I mean, you don't want any government, frankly, going from this end to that end and back and forth, because people looking at us, watching us, particularly the investment community, are looking for stability. They want to see, you said you were going to, if you
Yes.
flex, if you move, they're
Yeah.
okay. If you do a 180, then they start to go, oh, that's not what you told me you were going to do. So then they start saying, well, I'm not certain I want to invest, if you will, from that perspective, or I don't know if I want to come into partnership with a government that's moving. So I like that analogy, frankly, and things did change. I mean, revenues were up. So we took that. We took an ability, again, working with the Financial Accountability Officer and people like that, the Auditor General, and getting that feedback, and then saying, okay, so here's how we're going to adjust. Here's how we're going to flex.
It's an absolutely, you use the word stability there in regard to in the investment community, but I think that's also true in terms of the municipalities, because one of the things that I know caused a huge amount of angst at the municipal level was the OMPF funding.
Yes.
And that's been given some stability.
Yes, yes. So that's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund.
Right.
You and I know that, but for the listeners.
OMPF is what it calls.
So that is one that, again, is a transfer from the province to the municipalities. One of the things we, again, heard loud and clear, and many of our members around the table are former municipal councillors, so they've lived this. They actually understand it very well. What we heard really was, last year it came out way too late. We didn't know how to plan. For example, your wife would be sitting making budget plans without knowing what the contribution was coming in. So what they were really pleased, in most cases in my riding, most people actually either held the line or got increases. 2 did go down, and that over a couple of years will all balance out because it's a formula.
Sure.
But the good news is most of them got more money, and they know now 3 months ahead before their budget cycle, so they can say, we know exactly what we're doing. Now we can make better decisions.
I suspect that the accountants and finance chiefs in all the municipalities have a few less gray hairs.
Yes, I would assume so. Yeah, but for them, I mean, I know a lot of them, and again, the ability to understand the game you're playing. Coming in and dropping, whether it's a change of budget or what you even anticipated. Is always daunting because they're juggling a lot of different changing variables as well. So at least this one they can say, okay, we know we're getting this. We can build our budget from there now. I
think the other piece to remember too is that when we get our tax bill, that is a portion of revenue that a municipality receives. That OMPF, big long name, is another part of the funding for a municipality.
Absolutely.
And there are other resources, some large, some small. And we have to remember as people who pay taxes, we're one part of the puzzle. And I've learned over the years, it's one heck of a complex puzzle.
It is. It's very much. And again, you have other agencies that are funneling into there and out of their grant programs, those types of things. Our infrastructure funding is paramount. I mean, you know, a lot of our municipalities here have done very well with, I think you referenced last time I was on, again, so it gives them stability, ability to plan, and not having to worry about, oh, what if that bridge goes next week? Now I know I'm replacing it. So everyone sleeps a little bit better. But
we're seeing that with Owen Sound right now with the 10th Street Bridge. It's a very nice chunk of provincial funding that's in there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and a bit of pain. I mean, my office is on the new transit route, so it's very interesting. But I think again, you know, most people will understand that it's a little bit of pain for a long-term gain. And I think, you know, in a year and a half they'll have forgot all about the inconvenience sometimes because now we have it and it's going to last us for another 75 years.
Well, I was talking to Mayor Boddy recently, and his office, of course, is right there at the corner.
Mine's across the road.
Right across the road from yours, and he said that he's learned a lot of new words in the last few weeks.
And we are creatures of habit. I mean, it's interesting how many people still turn left on 9th Street, and you're not supposed to. But if you've done it for 35 years, you know, hopefully there's no fatalities or anybody gets hurt or any damage. But it's going to take people a little while to get onto it. But actually, I think the bulk of people, after the first week, are kind of good with it. Like, I think they've made the adjustment, and we know now. And many people are saying, I don't even go down there now. I do the bigger loop and just avoid all that congestion.
And I'm doing the same thing. In fact, to get over here to Rogers from the west side, I went a kind of a zigzag route that probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. But it works.
And you didn't sit in traffic. Absolutely.
I did not sit in traffic at all.
Which is good.
So that's what I want. So we're thankful for the money, and we hope that the project will continue apace.
Absolutely, me as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because this is a bad analogy to make. You're now on a dead-end street.
I am. You're correct. Not for long, though.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, not for long. Let's talk a little bit about Korea Electric Power, and I had not heard about that. That's tell us about KEPCO. What KEPCO you
Yeah,
call
so
it?
they're a company obviously from Korea. They have an interest in the nuclear world. Minister Fideli, Minister Hardeman, and I believe Mr. Cho were over doing a Korean trade mission. This is one of those companies that they actually had the ability to meet with. A good synergy between, again, our nuclear plant here in Bruce Power and them. So they've come back.
Because they do have a CANDU reactor.
I believe so, yes, or it
Yes.
could be could be one that we've exported. I can't remember.
Right,
It could be one of those,
an
yes.
exported
Yeah,
CANDU reactor.
Yes. So again, some synergy that was natural, but again, comfortable that you're moving forward, that you've made a commitment to nuclear. So they're going to say, we're going to invest and open up an office. So they are like many of the multitudes. I think now we're up to about 62 companies that, and I give a lot of credit to Mike Renchek, the CEO, and James Skoniak, who's the EVP of Corporate Resources, I think is his title. To foster a sense that we want you in our community. We want you to have a sense of engagement in our community, not just your workers, but your actual head office. So 63, KEPCO's one of those that has just recently moved. And again, I think it's great because more diversity, more opportunity for jobs, and more taxes coming into our area. So it's a winner all around.
It's one of those things that you kind of don't think about because we tend to be fairly narrow in our focus around Bruce Power and Hydro One and so on. All of a sudden, these are multinational companies that are saying, "Hey, we're interested."
Yes.
And okay, this is different. This is perhaps a sign of the change that is happening in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Big time. Yeah, absolutely. And it will change. It will change the complexity of who we are and what our community looks like, which I think is a good thing.
Yes.
They bring a lot of resources. They bring a lot of different thought processes. Many of these companies, again, many of the companies, even when I was at Bruce Power many, many years ago, were much bigger than Bruce Power.
Oh, yeah.
So they come with a lot of resources, a lot of skills, a lot of trades, again, which are going to help our area. And again, I think the biggest thing is it shows confidence. When they're actually physically setting up a location, they say, we've got something here that we're prepared to invest our money into. They could go anywhere in the world. And one of the things I really have seen, particularly with Minister Fideli, Minister Smith was doing it before him, is some people are critical when you say, oh, you're going to China, or you're going to Korea, or you're going to Japan. Every other significant country in the world, province in the world, is going out after that business. And it's like anything. If you're not going after it, someone else will fill that void and take them to Tennessee or to England or wherever. So we have to be competitive in that sphere. And I think this just shows if you invest a bit of money up front, you can reap rewards that may last for 50 years here. And one of the criticisms we hear continually, I hate to say it, is, oh, they're just nothing but a joyride or a junket. Some junket that they're on. All they do is all they're doing is eating and drinking and dancing on our taxpayers' money. But the reality is something different. I know that for a fact. Absolutely.
I mean, because really, it's not a matter of company to company. It's personal relationship. If you can sit across the table from your counterpart, and you've had dinner with them.
Absolutely.
It's a little different.
Absolutely. And I think there's also, some of those, and I think they have happened, sadly, and we all wear it, is if you have 50 people going, and staffers and all, well, what's the cost to go there? I can assure you our team was very lean. And very, very long days. So, Minister Fideli is the type of guy, he'd be up at 7 and wouldn't go to bed till 10, and he'd do that over and over and over and come back and meet as many people, have as many of those dinners, teas, coffees, whatever it would be, to build that relationship. And I'm a big believer, David, as I think you are, if you're not building a relationship, someone else is. And,
That's right.
And again, it sometimes comes down to just that person. I actually think it's one of the things that Premier Ford does extremely well. You've seen him step up now in the national unity. And I think part of that is he has some kind of an appeal with people to be able to sit across the table and just say, let's have a chat. And I think no different than Minister Fideli going to Korea and sitting across with the CEO or the politicians there, is it's building that one-on-one, to your point. And then when you have to make a decision, well, who was the person that I really warmed up to? Who was the person that I felt had integrity and trust? And I'm going to invest my company's potential in there. And I just, this is just one small result. I mean, I think you'll see many of them coming, and in a lot of cases, Minister Hardeman also went from the agricultural sector, and great to see a couple of the bans lifted, not necessarily specific to Korea, but bans lifted again. Is that because of those people dialoguing back and forth and building a relationship?
Yeah.
And I think that's the role of any government, is to build relationship, foster, strengthen, and move us all forward. And
it's such a different conversation and a different energy than the negative, the negativism that we see in other governments in other parts of the world, who shall remain nameless.
Absolutely.
But if I'm hearing you say that that's the way we want to do business.
Absolutely. I think our whole focus from the day we got elected, and again, the Premier is a big part of that. He is a business person. He understands. He forged businesses south of the border, and part of that, again, was seeing an opportunity, making a relationship, but money is being invested back and forth. And I think it's a great thing for us, particularly areas of agriculture, nuclear, where we can be an exporter, and countries that need, we have the safest food in the world. Why would we not want to be sharing that? Obviously, we need it in our own country as well. But if we have surpluses, why not? And create that opportunity. Nuclear is a prime example, I think, where we're exporting great things like can-do technology to the rest of the world. Because I think, again, even if we go to climate, if we were taking a whole bunch of our nuclear reactors to particularly China, India, Korea, and stopping them building coal plants, we're actually doing a huge thing across the global market. And I think that's the focus we need to all be looking at, as opposed to just in our own backyard. Obviously, we have to take care of our own backyard, don't get me wrong. But they're building a lot of coal plants that are going to be hugely detrimental to our global atmosphere. So I think we have opportunity as Ontarians and Canadians to export a lot of that technology.
Sure. Well, Bill, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, because my gosh, we haven't even put a dent in the agenda. All right. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Our ancestors came here from France to build a better life. We lived here happily for generations, until the British decided they wanted our land. The men were called to a meeting and then imprisoned. They demanded we swear an oath to their king and took everything, regardless. We were forced from Acadie, the only home we knew. Mon Acadie n'existera plus.
From 1755 to 1763, over 10,000 Acadians were ripped from their homeland. Despite this, Acadian culture endures in Atlantic Canada.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina of Homebodies Fitness. Join me for your at-home fitness routine. Let's all get fit together. Only on Rogers TV, Homebodies Fitness.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest is Bill Walker, MPP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, Minister without portfolio and Associate Minister of Energy. That rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I just say Bill.
Yeah, of course, Bill. We know that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the developments in childcare that's happened. what's happening? There's some new spaces created.
Yeah, 101, if I remember, it's hard to always keep all the numbers straight in my head.
You're right, it's 101 because your staff told me that.
Exactly. So again, you know, the whole idea that we've been trying to do as government is look at where there are deficiencies, try to find and spend money in the right places. So, you know, again, I always allude back, we have a deficit, so that means we're spending more than we're bringing in, but we are going to spend money. So where do we put it so that there's value for the people that we're given the opportunity to serve? So obviously early childhood education is a big issue, daycare is a big issue in a rural area like ours. Again, I think it's one of the big differences of an urban setting than a rural. We have a lot of small municipalities. They all need some form of daycare because people who don't have a car or don't have transportation need something localized. So I think it's great that we see that type of investment being made back here. And I think in one of your notes, we're doing things across the education sector. We're doing things in hospitals. So I think there's really good things happening in many of the sectors.
Yeah. Well, let's talk for a bit about hospitals, because you mentioned that from just briefly there. But the government dropped some big bucks on Grey Bruce Health Services and proportionally, I suspect, big bucks on the two other hospitals in Grey Bruce.
Yeah, so South Bruce-Grey Hospital Corporation, which is Chesley, Kincardine, Southampton, and no, Southampton's ours. Chesley, Kincardine, Durham, Walkerton received much significantly lower, but again, on the scale of size, proportionally, yes. Yeah. Hanover, of course, is a standalone, and Grey Bruce Health Service, I think, was in the area of $6 million.
Yes.
This is one of those things, again, I think it was $68 million that we invested overall for small and medium-sized hospitals in a lot of our communities. We've always tried to make the argument, particularly for Grey Bruce Health Services and South Bruce-Grey, they're multi-site. Most of the other hospitals, particularly again in an urban area, you have one big hospital. How do you fund that in the same way as you do one with 5 sites or 4 sites? So I think very
who
pleasing.
Are geographically dispersed as well.
Absolutely. So you've got travel, you've got transportation, you've got all those costs. 5 furnaces instead of 1, or heating system, whatever you want, HVAC system. So I think it was great. I'm going to meet the new CEO tomorrow, Gary Sims, at Grey Bruce Health Services, about that. So yeah, I was very, very pleased. And again, a case of pushing and working with the bureaucratic side of the government to say there are differences between a corporation like Grey Bruce Health Services. And again, you mentioned earlier some gray hairs. I'm sure the CFO and the CEO there and many other people, the board of directors certainly, were breathing a bit of a sigh of relief there, because that's a big number to come up with if we don't give it to them.
That's right. And
maintain service.
Probably would have meant big changes if they had not been received that kind of funding. And was equivalent money or also given to the big hospitals as well, or was it mostly?
No, this was all small and medium.
All small and medium.
Yeah. So a real focus on those.
That's a different approach than we've had in the past, because we've always heard that, hey, Hospital Gulch in Toronto, they'll get the big bucks. Sunnybrook will get big bucks. Ottawa Civic will get the big bucks. But we sit here and go, yeah, what about us?
Yeah. And I think, David, it's really replicative of who's around the table. So again, and again, I don't mean this from a partisan, but the Liberal government was mostly based out of urban Ontario. Yeah. So a lot of the thought process would have been there because that's what they knew. In our case, you have a lot of people in caucus, but around the cabinet table in particular. Todd Smith from Belleville, Vic Fideli from North Bay, Greg Rickford from Kenora Rainy River. So people coming saying, here's the real things we're hearing about. Here's the dilemma. And healthcare, again, cuts across any partisan lines. So let's do the right thing for our small rural hospitals. And again, it's a focal point. So I think, again, a case of listening, hearing, and actually taking action that they all went, oh, wow, thank you so much.
Well, and speaking of hospitals, one of the things because I happen to be working right now down in the Fleshton, Eugenia area, is the Markdale Hospital. And I've talked to you about it before, but do you have anything you can share about the Markdale Hospital?
So the best news I can share with you is that there is a very specific process to build a capital structure like a hospital. It's kind of a 5-stage, if I can simplify it. We're in stage 4, where they're doing kind of the final review. They'll soon go, I believe, to tender, and that's kind of this stage to get to. And the 5th stage is actually the building. So what I have said for about the last year and a half to whoever the CEO and the board of directors are, is my understanding is it's following that process. We're on track. We were named in the budget. which I think is a great thing. So the minute actually that it comes off of that rail, you tell me, because I'm going to go back and start screaming and hollering again. But to me right now, we're in a good place. It's following that process. It's on the time frame they set. And again, you have engineering studies, you have architects, you have all the type of thing. And then to put a procurement document together for something as big as a hospital is significant. So I can assure the people, my 8 years, I've been working on that. I cannot wait till the day that we wheel the first person through the front doors, and I'll continue to work until we do that.
Well, the only hope we have, Bill, we don't call it the Bill Walker Memorial Hospital.
Well, I don't think that'll ever happen, but yes, no. And I think, as I say, we're looking in the next year or so that we'll hopefully finally hit shovels in the ground. And to all those people, again, I mean, I certainly empathize with the people who have given money. Sadly, we've lost some people.
Yes,
and that's a big issue for all of us that
issue
we should have been concerned about, that have donated in good conscience and sadly have passed on. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, that legacy will still serve their community, and their wish will be honored at some point.
Because, as I say, working down in that area, I've noticed the significant changes that are happening. There's more housing being built.
Yes.
There's, my gosh, there's even a Tim Hortons.
There's a new Tim's, a new Foodland
coming in. And I don't know whether you noticed it, but just between Markdale and Berkeley, there's a solar farm, 2 solar farms going in.
Yes.
On either side of the highway.
Yes.
There's some poultry barns, I think, or on the east side, but just take a look next time you're going down.
Yes, no, I have noticed that, absolutely.
Those are solar farms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even further side, Dundalk again, big building going on there. So, it's why, if I can go back to kind of the Grey Gables, I'm saying again, here's the opportunity to think into the future. What are the bed needs going to be, as opposed to just always going either backwards, which I think sadly some of the numbers were being used, or even current day. What do we need in 20 years? If we're building 3 or 4 more not long-term developments, we're going to need more long-term care.
Sure.
And this is the one time we're actually opening up to say, here's your opportunity to grab beds. Or to have beds. So that's where I've been a proponent, saying let's look, and again, not trying to wade into the county level of government. They need to do what they need to do. But I think at the end of the day, we all serve the people, and we need to look at that.
Now, there's speaking of long-term care, I think there are 512 new beds for this area. Now, are those are a combination of municipal beds and private funded beds?
Yes, they are, and some of those, by the way, are redeveloped beds. So, So in the case, there are a fairly small number, I think, going into Hanover. I think about 26 or 28 beds into a facility there. Rockwood is being redeveloped and is getting an additional number of beds, again, with time. And they kind of had numbers now that what you're optimal to operate at. So whether it be 128 or 164, again, one of those numbers.
Yeah, I've heard that's stated.
Yeah, it's kind of an optimal
number is about
160,
staffing,
64, thereabouts. So that's going to happen there. Here in Owen Sound, you're going to have 3 existing facilities that will which are older, be replaced by one larger one, by Southbridge, which is private, and they actually will have an additional number of beds. And then I believe Meaford is as well looking at some beds over there. So we've kind of got most of the county covered, and then Grey Gables still has an opportunity because we opened that envelope. We're going to do 15,000 new beds and redevelop another 15,000 in our mandate over the next 10 years. So huge opportunity to make sure that the whole geography of our riding is covered. And again, a mix of both public, which is mandated by the Act. You have to have, every county has to have at least one. In Grey we have 3, and Bruce we have 2. And then some private sector, which is great.
So it sounds like that silver tidal wave that we've been talking about, which I fully admit I'm a part of.
Yes.
You're too young.
I'm right at the tail end of it. Yes.
But I fully admit I'm a part of. Yeah. It sounds like that's beginning to shape up and become more. The government is paying more attention to that.
It is, and one of the challenges, and this will sound maybe too aggressive, but one of the sad things for me sitting there for 8 years was there wasn't a lot done. I think there were 600 beds built in the last 10 or 15 years by the Liberal government, and everybody knew that tidal wave was coming. So now the challenge becomes, how do you get them built fast enough? So again, some of those people that are in a certain point in life, will they ever benefit from that? So yes, we're taking the action. You still need the people to build. You still need those skilled trades and the companies to be able to do it. But I think the good thing for people is to say, here's a government that did listen, values, frankly, seniors and long-term care needs, and are putting an action plan to say we're going to address that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I've been going through the whole long-term care placement issue personally, and in two different LHINs, crossing two different LHINs, and the difference between one LHIN and the other is like night and day.
Yes.
Like one LHIN has absolutely superb resources for long-term care. The other one, me. And I'm going, their waiting list is 5 years.
Wow.
It's ridiculous, but that's the difference.
It is.
That's the difference.
And it's one of the dichotomies, David, I've certainly found getting into government is if you do everything standardized so everybody has to be the same is a good thing. But then you stifle creativity, and that one LHIN you're talking might have been more creative. I have a friend who is a LHIN CEO, very, in my mind, very progressive. Ran for the Liberals, in fact, but very progressive, great guy.
You won't hold that against him.
No, and in fact we get along, exceedingly well. Yeah. But where I'm going with that is he was very progressive from the perspective of he would not be held back by bureaucracy and old thinking and move forward, and had great service. A CEO on the other side, if you standardize, may not ever get that creative and grab innovation and do different things. And I think what you're sharing with me is you can have two very similar areas geographically divided by a road in many cases.
Exactly, that's the case.
Chalk and cheese, right?
Yep.
So as a legislator, that's always the age-old challenge of do I go and standardize because people want to say, well, I want my dad or my mom to get the same as they did across the road. But what if this person actually puts more effort into it? What if this person gets more creative? So, I think it's finding a balance to say we want minimum levels of standard. How Bill Walker, not my party, but Bill Walker's personal thought is you want minimal size, but you don't want to stifle creativity and innovation, I don't think.
Yeah. It's interesting I happen to be listening to a podcast recently where the speaker was talking about the creativity of constraint. And suggesting that when we are in constraint, we actually become at our most creative. Yeah. And now, the corollary of that, or the practical application of that, is how here we are in Grey Bruce. We've been constrained here for years.
Very much.
And we produced what is colloquially called the Grey Bruce solution at every level, at municipal level, at provincial level, even at federal level. And sometimes it works, and sometimes we do real well.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've always been a big proponent and very proud to be from this area because people are, and I think a lot of it is because you really don't have the abundance in many cases that other areas have. I found it very interesting being a Hepworth guy when I went to work in Wyerton, and then I did the Wyerton Lions Head and Tobermory healthcare facilities. And even Tobermory to Lions Head had a whole different frontier spirit. And then Lions Head versus Wyerton was more frontier. And then they all said, oh, no, Owen Sound, we don't want to go there because they were the big urban area. But it really is to your point. And, and I have to share, I think I was reading yesterday or the day before, I'm heading down to Chesley tomorrow to go through their remodeled emergency facility in their hospital, and Mr. Barrett, the CEO or the chair, I can't remember who said, I just can't remember who quoted, said, we forced them to do some certain things, but they've actually come out of it stronger and ahead of the game as far as both financially, but service levels. So to your point, if you don't sometimes push and ask for more, you never get. Yeah. But you have to do that with a strategy and a method to allow people to be creative without constricting them. And the other side is you don't want to then demoralize them and keep asking for more and more when at the end of the day they've been very creative. Right.
Acknowledge the creativity, but don't keep pushing simply because you got to keep pushing.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's switch to education because we've got a new school being built here.
We do. $29 million in Meaford. I was pleased to have Minister Lecce here, which was great. I think, again, for that community, great news. K to 12, so it's going to be a fabulous facility, state-of-the-art, modern. Certainly the municipal council and the people of Meaford, I think, are ecstatic. And it's a wonderful news for our community. Again, providing jobs, helping the economy, and again, a world-class facility for our kids, which is what we're all wanting to do.
Sure. Now, is the old school being torn down, do you know, or are they? I can't recall. When I get Barb Klumpus on here after Christmas, I must ask her because I'm not sure.
I can't remember if that one or whether I'm confusing it with long-term care, because one of them they were going to repurpose for something else. I'm not certain whether that's the school or the long-term care facility over there.
Because I know here at Owen Sound we repurposed Strathcona, was sold, and it's going to become apartments.
Right.
In fact, I just saw that whole process go through council, so we'll just wait and see.
And some it becomes a case of the actual facility. I mean, if
True.
it's laden with asbestos or structurally it's not. I know in Gateway Haven and Wyerton, the long-term care facility, in that case there was talk when they went to build the new one of could we repurpose. But by the time you would invest money into it to get it up to today's current standards, it just wasn't worth it. So they tore it down. I can't remember in Meaford which one.
Yeah, and that's always the dilemma. Because we want our old buildings, we want to preserve and conserve, but sometimes repurposing is more expensive, or rebuilding is more expensive than building new.
Yes.
You know, the corollary the flip side is also true, as we found with the City Hall here in Owen Sound. When it would be several $1 million more to build a new building, so we have what we got, and it seems to be lovely.
And I think you have to look at the life cycle of the asset if you put that money in. You know, our old hospital, the General and Marine, was turned into apartments. So it was obviously in a structural, I believe it was Barry's Construction that bought it and said, okay, from a business I can invest and still make a go of this. Other buildings, to your point, you would be putting good money after bad, and you wouldn't get the life cycle out of it. So I think every one of those has to be done on a business mindset. What's the investment in versus the outcome?
Yeah. Let's talk a bit too about where was I going there? Oh yeah, now I know where I'm going. Let's talk a bit about medical care in general in Ontario. There's a whole new structure that we're getting called health teams.
Yes.
What's your understanding of those health teams, Bill?
So the whole idea there again is to flatten out, if you will, the service. To get rid of the LHINs, because again we'd get off into 14 of them. Even the interim stage, it's just coming out. I don't know if this is public yet, but it's coming. We're going to go down to 5 as the interim as we move forward to those.
I hate to tell you, just before we sat down to tape, the announcement came out that 9 LHIN CEOs have been terminated.
Yes. So we're going to go down to 5 as we transition through. But the whole idea, again, is more seamless, better coordination, ensuring that, again, the resources are going into frontline care. So one of the concerns, and it's exactly the point that you raised, 9 CEOs. If we can do it with 5, why did we have 14? So that money now from 9 can be put back into frontline care. So the whole idea is integrate more, go across the spectrum. We used to have a lot of silos still, that you would have different versions of healthcare operating outside. The whole intent of these health teams is to bring everybody to the table. So we're looking at a geographic area where everybody who's playing a piece in that pie is at the table in a much more coordinated, less duplication, less you're going down this path and someone's going past you this way and they never talk. So huge opportunity, big change.
Big change.
But I believe, again, they've done lots of consultation. They've had lots of people involved in a number of capacities to say what we had before obviously wasn't working. And I mean, I certainly heard that front line big time from the day I got elected. The system we currently have is not going to take us into the future. So you could have said, okay, we can tweak it or we can live with it, or you have to take a bold step. And I congratulate Minister Elliott to say, you know what, we've listened, we have to go down that path. Healthcare is what we all, at the end of the day, really care about. And you mentioned earlier, the wave is coming at us, the demographics. Yeah. So to think we could do old business and get better outcomes was not a reality that I think people finally resolved. It'll be interesting to see where these go. I mean, I'm part of that again, is to say, whenever you try something new, there's going to be side steps, there's going to be, back to our fall economic statement, we'll have to be nimble, we'll have to make adjustments as we go. But I do think it's the right path, because what I hear from people is I don't know how to navigate. I don't have seamless systems. I don't really get the best care that I think I could if there was better coordination. So that's the goal.
Let's hope so. In fact, I had this conversation yesterday with, of all people, my doctor's receptionist, saying that we still have people without doctors, and that's got to be addressed. That we've still got people who are on the edges, who are not well served by the medical care system. How do we address that? It's a big piece.
Oh, huge.
It's a huge piece. At the same time, I happened to hear a speech by Minister Elliott last week where she was very clear about some direction for the healthcare system, and I think, I can subscribe to that. I think there's some good things that the government has in store for healthcare. But, as we all know, the devil will be in the details.
It is, David, and it's always daunting because as nobody likes change, everybody challenges change. But I'll give you an example, and I know you're very close to the public health. So I was down, and we were actually talking, I'm trying to think what the terminology was, but it was really moving again into another space of electronic care.
Yes.
And what this was, there was a specialist there was a regular physician, and the administration of the family health team. And what this really shared is if everyone buys into it, is when you're sent off to a specialist, not only does your doctor know and be able to follow, you as the patient can know exactly. So we've all heard of those situations where my doctor referred me to a specialist. It took 6 months. I didn't know who to call. No one called me. I scrambled all over this. This you can actually track and know exactly when. And the specialist was really high on it, saying, it takes me away from doing a lot of churn and administration. It takes my staff away, frankly, from having to go and make 15 different calls. It's all electronic. Now, there's a cost to invest in that. Yeah. But if you can then have those human elements, going back to patient care and doing more, I'll say, touch stuff as opposed to administrative, I think it's huge opportunity. And I think to serve, because of our vast geography, our sparse population, our elderly, we have to engage some of these. And even your comment, and not that, again, I will never get away, and I'm not that I'm suggesting we get away, but I use my mom as an example. She went from having a family doctor who delivered me and was her doctor for probably 45 years to a nurse practitioner. And she was quite pleased with that. Now, she wasn't quite pleased when she first thought about it. She wanted another doctor, just like Dr. Leeson. And God love him, he was a wonderful man, as most of our doctors are. But women. Yes, absolutely. So she very quickly progressed because she was getting the care. Yes. And I think in our world, again, you know, when you turn off a tap to create physicians, it doesn't just get turned on tomorrow because a new government or a new idea. So nurse practitioners are going to fill a void. You know, how we utilize our nursing staff again, and what they can do. And one of the things, since I've been there in 8 years, we always hear from various health practitioners is expand my scope. And I'll use an example of pharmacists, and again, the public health unit. The scope of what they can administer now, which 25 years ago would have been unheard of, but now that other group can go on and do something different and specialize. And you know,
I think of a good example of that is what's happening in public health, because I happen to be, as you say, close to that field. Public health is looking after dentistry for children in the Healthy Smiles program, which is, I think, one of the best things we can do for our kids. But now the new seniors dentistry program, which is, the funding is just coming on stream, and that will be administered by public health. And that's going to be a big chunk of money being spent here in Grey Bruce for a very specific population. And very different. You would not have said, I have, some of my family members are old public health people. In fact, my late mother is, and she would be astonished
where you're at.
Here you're doing dentistry.
And I think there again we have to be open-minded enough to say, if you have private practitioners and public, let's combine resources. Let's not get into this us versus them and go down that path and waste a bunch of time. You asked me at the start of the show, have I had my flu shot? So yes, I have. This year I had it. Actually, Dr. R gave it to me, administered it to me. It is free, so he did give it to me.
Does your arm hurt?
It didn't. No, he was fabulous. But I have also, I get it every year. I'm a big proponent that I believe it's a good proactive way to go. But in past years, I've again had it at a pharmacy. So again, let's get more people through the system, regardless of where it is.
What I heard actually from actually, I think it was the Deputy Minister of Health was saying that the flu shot has been one of the great successes of public health in this province for one reason. The public may not have all its flu shots. We haven't got a great public administration of flu shots. We have been able to administer it to a target population in long-term care.
Big time.
Which has reduced the load on the healthcare system, which has in turn saved money.
Absolutely.
So people, if they don't get sick in the first place because they got a flu shot, they don't end up.
There's more money going into the system, absolutely.
There's no money.
They're not costing, absolutely.
And they don't become, to use that awful word, bed blocker.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer. I mean, I'm a recreation guy from way back. So I'm always a believer in the proactive, being ahead of the curve, as opposed to trying to fix you. Let's try to keep you healthy. And I think that works across public health, private health. I don't think it really matters. But all of these resources, we again have which we've said a number of times, we've got that boom coming at us.
Yeah.
We all have to be thinking the same way. How do we be most effective? Yeah. How do we serve the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time?
Bill, I want to thank you.
Pleasure.
We're out of time, and I want to thank you for being a part of Politically Speaking and sharing the news out of Queen's Park.
My pleasure.
And the good stuff that's happening. And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll see you again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Looking for great seats to all the action? Rogers Super Sports Pack delivers. With NBA League Pass, get up to 40 out-of-market games every week.